What's up, Ibs? Doesn't look like there's anybody else but me and you, buddy. So if you got some questions, anything specific you want me to go over, let's start talking it out. Hey, Nor. We'll get right into it, guys. What's up, Indreen? Thank you guys for saying hello. Make sure we know in there. But like I said, get right into it. What questions you guys have? Sure, Indreen. So for it looks like we got about 5 viewers here. Indreen has stated that just want to kind of review the key terms. So I'm going to focus primarily on period 4, and I'm just going to do a probably like 5 to 10 minute little talk over them, and then you guys can let me know. So remember that the age of Jefferson is super important because it's kind of the rise of the anti-federalist. Ultimately the War of 1812 will end the Federalist Party. But, politics in general is always a reaction. You'll get Democratic presidents and Republican presidents. And remember that the Federalists, starting with the Constitution up until Jefferson's election, have had pretty much total control of the government, right? And they've been continually expanding power, and for a good reason, because, the anti-federalists are a little bit more of the Articles of Confederation, and the Articles of Confederation kind of proved that we needed a stronger federal government, stronger sessional government. Whether it be John Marshall in the Supreme Court, George Washington and his president, or, even our congressional leaders who have by probably population more power up in the North, the Federalists are running strong. So, enter the age of Jefferson, and that's just a direct reaction against it, right? The anti-federalists. Remember that also during this time that a lot of our military or a lot of our politics, since we're kind of a young country, depending on what's going on in Europe, and Europe is going through right now the French Revolution, and they're going through the age of Napoleon. And so the age of Jefferson is kind of a problem for Jefferson because we have France kind of doing a lot of different things, and then we'll also get Britain doing things during this time, and America is reacting. Again, you would know that mostly the anti-federalists were pro-French, whereas the Federalists were a little bit more pro-British, right? And other items we do kind of compare and contrast. So, really, when it says a comparison, I'll write it right now: comparison of Federalist and now anti-Federalist power. Louisiana Purchase happens during the age of Jefferson, right? It's a massive purchase. I really don't need to know about the details of the Louisiana Purchase, but what you really need to know a little bit more is what that kind of causes a problem. And the problem that is this continual issue of land. And as we get more and more land in the Union, we're going to have to develop more and more compromises. Remember the Missouri Compromise, I believe, will be coming out of this, right? The Compromise of 1850 will be eventually coming out of the Louisiana Purchase as we kind of divide that, add 1 to 1 to 1. Again, I don't know if you really would need to freak out about like why like the causes of it. It's more about the effects, right? The effects on especially the Civil War. As I stated earlier, John Marshall Supreme Court with the Federalists, Marbury versus Madison is an important court case. I don't think we need to really get into the details, but remember that basically at midnight, Madison, I think it's Adams or something like that, drops all these court nominations that are Federalist in there, and Madison, who is I think the Secretary of State under Thomas Jefferson, says we don't want all these Federalists, because Madison actually switched sides. He goes to anti-Federalists. And he goes, we don't want all these Federalists in there. We're not going to give them a kind of what we call a Senate hearing, where they go in front of the Congress and kind of get asked questions about how they view things before they become that confirmation hearing. And Marbury, who was the judge that got nominated by Adams, basically he sues Madison, and because he sues Madison, it goes to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court says, well, Marbury, according to this judicial act, you don't even have the power to sue, but because I just said I'm reviewing a act that's by court, we're going to do something called judicial review. And so I'll put, the word judicial review in bold here. And that judicial review basically says that the Supreme Court's job is to look at the Constitution and basically decide if things are going to be constitutional or unconstitutional. So there's that one. War of 1812. Remember that this is again have really to do with impressment, right? Also, it has to do with land up in Canada. And so remember that during the French Revolution and Napoleon, they're consistently impressing ships, right? The British and the French are doing that. And so we tell them not to, and the British continue to do so. We see an opportunity to perhaps make Canada a part of the United States, and we got some territorial issues with our western boundary, our northern boundary. Remember that they fight in the Great Lakes, so they get the War of 1812. Again, don't really know the issues. One of the massive effects, obviously, is the decline of the Federalists. The Federalists are seen as very pro-British during this time, so pro-British that perhaps they're more British than American, right? Because the Americans are fighting them at this time. Another massive effect is we're going to get Andrew Jackson, who's a general at this time, basically went to New Orleans, and he, remember, fought for 16 more days past the peace treaty because they didn't have any type of telegram or anything like that to get their communication go fast enough. But basically, he is going to get into kind of national prominence. He's going to be known as this really great American hero, and he's going to have an opportunity to use that sensationalism to be elected and president. And, just like Jefferson was a massive president, Andrew Jackson, obviously, with his Indian Removal Act, with his kind of bank vetoes to stop the National Bank, he's going to be really known as a strong anti-federalist. Monroe, Henry Clay, and Era Good Feelings. Remember, that's when we have one party at this time. We have just the Democratic Republicans, I believe it is, ruling. What are the other ones? We have some Whigs, we have some other ones, but those are the guys. Era of Good Feelings. We came out of the War of 1812, and although it's like pretty much a truce treaty, it's really nothing got solved. We come out of it thinking that we kind of was able to defeat one of the strongest, navies and also militaries in the world at the time. So we're feeling good about ourselves, right? This is the increase of what we call nationalism. I remember in the book it said something about economic nationalism. I know that is always just protecting the United States. So once again, we're still doing a little bit of mercantilism. Why? The rest of the world has mercantilism, and they're trying to protect things. During this time with Napoleon, the British basically are on their own island, and because they hate all of what's going on in Europe, and especially for Napoleon taking over pretty much all Europe, they're just relying on themselves. So the idea of mercantilism, the idea of economic nationalism, the idea of tariffs is very important. Remember, one thing that they did is in Jefferson, he had tariffs. He put some embargo act, I believe it is. And, we really see that's maybe one of the massive reasons why Jefferson lost, going kind of back to Jefferson, why Jefferson lost. So during this whole time period 4, just like in period 3, we have mercantilism. And what's that economic theory? You need to protect your country. And that's what the United States is doing. But unfortunately, everything backfires in our face because we're not really strong enough economy. We really need to rely on that trade, to sell our goods. Because we have a vast country with a lot of natural resources, and those natural resources need to be turned into products and then sent around, or at least just sent around the world. And if we're taxing people and they're saying, fine, we won't get anything from you, then all of our stuff is staying in warehouses. And, what that happens is inflation, or if you don't even have inflation, you have people without a job, right? So they're just sitting doing things. So there's that. Missouri Compromise. Remember, that's going to create a line that says here's going to be north, here's going to be south. Either that's going to be undone. But that, don't get that confused with the Great Compromise of the Constitution, which is the idea that the House of Representatives gets population and the Senate gets 2 senators for the Congress, right? The upper house and lower house. Market revolution, just make sure it's on the north. The idea of laborers, the rise of unions, those type of things. There's the age of Jackson the Common Man, the Indian Removal Act. I'm not going to go too much into detail on that. Those are kind of self-explanatory. Well, not the age of Jackson, because there could be so many things. When we say the common man at the time, no, it's not common woman. No, it's not common enslaved man. And notice it's not common Indian or Mexican, or, we really don't have Asians really coming into the United States until, the 1850s. So really that's not until the next one. But, I remember Mario kind of talking about, oh, the common man, he's for everybody. And it's not necessarily that. He was kind of known as just that he's like, hey, I'm uneducated. I'm drunk. I'm a great general. Vote for me because I'm a part of the common man, right? It's that kind of feeling. It's so, what is the common man at this time? It's a poor white farmer, right? Especially from what he represents. He represents from the South. So what do we have? A lot of poor white farmers. Remember, we don't have a lot of these really rich plantation owners. That's a very small population. Most of the population are poor farmers, right? Indian Removal Act, remember that's removal of Indians. One effect was the Trail of Tears, right? So there's that one. And then the Second Great Awakening, I think we went through a lot of the Second Great Awakening through the DBQ. I noticed that this was one of those. So, I really feel you guys are seeing the questions. This is almost all period 3. We have a couple period 4 kids, but period 3 kids, you'll see this as well. But, I definitely the word mercantilism in period 1 was super important. That showed up in the short answer review that we did. I guaranteed multiple other questions. So just as a heads up, I really think that this little document really helps you guys really focus on, what I think is definitely going to be on the test. All right, so that's a review of period 4. I've been looking at the document, so I've been looking at all these questions. So anyways, I'll go ahead and start looking at the questions and go for this. What was Marbury versus Madison's and its effects? Okay, so I think I kind of reviewed that, Ayub, so I think I already covered it. Let me know if you have a very specific question. It's, again, about the judicial review. And remember, Marbury is the judge that was brought in by Adams, some what we call midnight appointments right before he left for presidency. And Jefferson came in. He puts all these judges. There's one called Marbury. Madison is the Madison that created the Federalist Papers. He also helped create the Constitution. He's one of our founding fathers, and he is now Secretary of State under Thomas Jefferson. And he is Marbury is suing Madison because Madison has said, fine, we're not going to have a trial. And the effects are judicial review. So I'll get into it a little bit more. Effects of the Embargo Act, again, I already did that, kind of ends Jefferson's presidency. He is going to be blamed for horrible economic conditions. So there we go. Would the indentured servants vote for the common man? One thing to think about is at this time we have a Naturalization Act that was passed by the Federalists. I guarantee by this time, I don't know, we don't really talk about it, but I guarantee by the time of Andrew Jackson, they might have lowered this, or maybe it stayed the same, really don't know. Sorry, to be honest. But what was that Naturalization Act? It extended the number of years that you had to be there to be a citizen. I think it went from 7 to 13 or 14, something like that. So remember, in order for you to be a male citizen at this time, in order to vote, you have to be a male citizen, and male citizens had to have been there for a good amount of time. I'm assuming most indentured servants would have gained their freedom by that time. Also, the indentured servants, Mina, is not really during this era. That kind of will end with I would say even before the American Revolution, probably in the 1750s or 1740s. Remember, slavery starts getting banned in the United States in certain areas as early as their founding, and then I believe, and it's in one of the compromises, they actually ended in 1789 in the Constitution. They actually ended the slave trade. So the slave trade, they don't need any more slaves coming over here, and also we don't need any indentured servants. The indentured servants have earned their freedom. Most of the indentured servants are probably grandparents right now at this time period when we call period 4 in the common man. Their grandparents, they were the last indentured servants, and now we have these free men and women going out and, working in factories or going to farms or pioneering or staying back in Philadelphia and Jamestown and becoming, liquor store owners and stuff like that, like barkeepers and, people doing shopping and stuff like that. They had those things at this time, right? Bakers, all those things that a town would need. Effects of the Industrial Revolution. Kind of would want to refer you to a page number, because it kind of goes on forever. There's, free African Americans are getting opportunities. So we'll go ahead and take a look at this. I do think that this will be on the test for sure. I mean, obviously it's there for a reason. So talking about that, religion, second grade weekend of thought, it would be. So give me a second. Yeah, so if you want, guys, go to page 160 if you have your book. That kind of starts there about this idea of the market revolution. What we have is, as Ube said, we have transportation. When transportation goes, you're able to move things faster. You move things faster, and you may make things faster. You make things faster, and you have technology. You create the factory system, right? So page 161, we got these patent laws, and people are making inventions, rifles and cotton gin, which actually caused slavery to increase. Corporation raising capital. Remember, capital is extra money to invest. So these corporations would get extra money, and what would they do? They'd buy stock, right? And if you're in period 3, we talked about stock. If you're not, we'll give you a little refresh on period 4 about what a stock is. The factory system, I don't think it's easy. I think it's easy to do that. Labor. Remember that at first, it's always about textile mills. Kind of interesting. I just read this. At first, factories had difficult finding workers for their mills. Factory life could not compete with the lure of cheap land in the West. Again, going back to Manifest Destiny, like the idea is always you need a better way. Go west, and you'll have your own land, and you'll be your own king of your own land. You get to do whatever you want. Go hunt on it. Go farm on it. Survive on it. Do what you gotta do. So, anyways. Going back to labor, textile mills, we see the word child labor that's happening of that. Also, immigrants are coming over now. This is when we get the German and the Irish that are coming over for opportunities in the United States, and they're going into factories. Remember, not good stuff. Unions rise, and what are they going to do? They're going to fight for, like socialist things, fight for better wages, better working conditions, end of child labor. Women are in this group are going to be asking for equal pay, as they still do today. Right. So moving on, don't, go back to page 164. So those are the effects. Page 164. So the effects of market revolution. Women get opportunity to get jobs. However, they are, again, not getting paid nearly much. Economic and social mobility. Real wages improved for most urban workers, but the gap between the very wealthy and the very poor increased. Social mobility did occur from one generation. Okay. So, obviously, I just didn't want to lie to you guys. There were, what social mobility is overall people were able to move up in classes, right, from lower class to middle class to upper class. But once again, there is a gap between the rich and poor. And remember, once again, most people do not become millionaires. It says in the last sentence, right? There are extreme examples of poor, hardworking people become millionaires. However, were rare. Those extreme examples. So that was not the case, but there was definitely opportunities to own your own land, which was better than what your parents did, who were probably under some kind of lord back in England, or if it's in that type of a situation, or some kind of rent. So you had that, or if you work in the factory, wages are increasing. You're getting some more money than what you had gotten past. Slavery. Let's see here. Thought disappear with all this stuff. However, the cotton gin, the cotton industry, and they began expanding it into the Louisiana Purchase territory. So Uber on page 164 has everything you need. Effects of Industrial Revolution on the South and North. I don't know, man. I could go on forever on that. We can go from canals, we can go from geography, we can go to the Civil War. So many items. So obviously, the massive thing is going to give the North the edge during the Civil War, right? They're going to have the railroads, they're going to have the factories, they're going to have the goods and finished products, and also they're going to have the population and manpower to not only make sure that these factories are employed and running, but also have people to, wear the uniform and get the gun and shoot the bullet and call an army. So they're going to have a much bigger and stronger army and a much more effective army during the Civil War. I'd say that's the biggest effect on the Industrial Revolution. Also, an increasing frustration about the idea of slavery, right? If you're a worker up in the North, you might be thinking, like, what's the big deal? Just give these people opportunity. Also, if you're on the border states, you're probably a little frustrated because, these slaves come in and they'll basically, they're forced to work for free and you want a wage. And because of that, and because there's competition, right, your wages are going down at this time. So it's kind of some, I don't know, out there stuff about the North and the South. Cool. All right, guys. So kind of finished up the questions over there. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and fire it on. And I will reply to them. If you guys want to review anything from period 1, 2, or 3, help you with that as well. I'm going back and just looking at these items. One thing I think I'm going to do on Thursday, as much as we can, I don't know. I really think that period 8 is really going to be a large portion of the test. I really don't think we've covered that so much. So I really think that we should go to like the Adam Norris and look at period 8. Yeah, the First Bank of the U.S. I think is compromised with Hamilton, right? They moved the capital further south. I believe he's able to get Hamilton's able to get his bank, right? And what's the idea of the bank is instead of having all these little small banks, you have a large bank in the middle that's kind of helping control the debt of the United States and also pushing money into factories. Again, this is mercantilism. China as a government kind of does that today, and they're called communists, right? So again, communism and mercantilism as a practice are very, very similar, right? It's the idea that you just focus on your own country. And so, I mean, that's how it's been practiced out, unfortunately. So like China today, it's obviously just one party, and this party directs what money from the bank goes to what companies, right? It's not like it's a competition where you can get free loans or easy or cheap loans. So obviously it's a federalist thing, and what are federalists? They're a bunch of bankers anyways, right? And what they're going to want to do, they're probably want to have high interest rates. The second bank of the United States is, so what happened to the first? I think it's during Andrew Jackson, he like allows a second bank of the United States, but I think he vetoes that, and it goes into these state banks and these little private banks, what he calls the pet banks. So let me do a quick look at the First Bank of the United States and kind of figure out a little bit more. So I'm gonna go to Wikipedia. Yeah, so the charter was for 20 years, and after that they just didn't renew the charter, and so it just went down. Let me see if I can find the end of it. So up here, guys, it says this. The Bank of the United States was a three-part expansion of federal fiscal and monetary power, along with federal mint and excise taxes, that was championed by Alexander Hamilton, the first Secretary of the Treasury. Hamilton believed a national bank was necessary to stabilize and improve the nation's credit, right, to get rid of their debt. And how he's going to do that? He was going to take on the state's debt and he's going to pay it off, basically get it all together. Instead of having all these states paying different banks all across the world, different interest rates, and all confused. And to improve the handling of the financial business, right, to direct money probably to those factories, again, like how kind of China does today. I'm going to go expiration charter. After Hamilton left office in 1795, informed Congress, state government. So I'm just going to read this. After Hamilton left office in 1795, the new Secretary of Treasury, Oliver Wolcott, informed Congress that due to the existing state of government finances, more money was needed. This could be achieved by either selling the government shares of stock in the bank or by raising taxes. Wolcott advised first. Imagine that you could like buy parts of the bank, and as the bank went up, you got more money, right? Congress quickly agreed. Hamilton objected, believing the dividends on the stock, the money that we'd get from the stock, had been inviolably pledged for the support of sinking fund to retire the debt. Hamilton tried basically that they were going to get all this money basically to that would not retire the debt, unfortunately. Hamilton tried to organize opposition for the measure, but was unsuccessful. In 1811, the U.S. Senate tied on a vote to renew the bank's charter. Vice President George Clinton at the time, that's interesting, broke the tie and voted against the renewal. The bank charter thus expired in 1811. In 1816, they renewed it. They called the Second Bank of the United States. So for 5 years, they didn't have a Bank of the United States. Yeah, definitely, right. Precious, so going to Precious question, could the market revolution be tied to the rise of corporations and big business? Yeah, for sure, right? It's all about the Industrial Revolution, right? And you could definitely talk about the railroads being super important at the time, or canals. Yeah, I mean, they're both going to focus on industrial power. They're going to focus on oil. They're going to focus on electricity later. They're going to focus on coal and engines and the banking. And with banking always comes communication, like telegraphs, right? I mean, the thing called Western Union, I don't know if you guys know, but Western Union was a way to get money through the telegraph from one place to another across the United States. So even the Industrial Revolution and the focus on communication networks, helps things move. Today, you guys, like I said, you can buy a lot of things with your phone, right? You don't even need to take the time to go to the bank. And what does that do? It makes you able to spend things faster. So as money is able to move faster, you guys know this, as goods move faster, that means the economy goes up. When things start slowing down, when the money stops circulating, stops moving, people start holding on to it, start freaking out about it, we got a problem, right? It leads to a depression or panic. That's why people pulled it out of the bank, right? Give me all the money out of the bank. And what that caused? The Great Depression, right? With all these bank failures that happen. So yeah, I don't know like exactly what you mean. Like what else? I mean, definitely social effects would be the same, right? A lot of the robber barons would be known for their like pollutionary ways or something, the effects on health, and maybe not giving enough money back to the people and helping them with their social ills, right? You have the gospel wealth, and then you have the social gospel, right? Gospel wealth is I'm rich, I need to give money back to people. The social gospel is, hey, us as society should help one another, and that's where Jane Addams built those settlement houses, basically to help the poor. What we would call, you probably look at what would be like a homeless shelter, or what we call a halfway house today, is what she's calling a settlement house, just to help the poor, get a place so they can get a job, and probably move them out so that they get an apartment, get the next group of people, and do the same thing over and over again. So, I definitely could see that probably with child labor and with people moving to New York City for factories, or these cities like Philadelphia, later Chicago, to get a job. I guarantee there was pollution and other issues, right? So probably multiple relations that you could have there. Yeah, oops. Uncle Tom's Cabin is going to be period 5. So we're going to focus on period 1, 2, 3, and 4 tonight. Period 5 we'll do tomorrow. I mean, unless nobody else has a question. If nobody has a question, we'll talk about Uncle Tom's Cabin, but kind of try to keep these periods together for you guys so you guys can kind of understand the history rather than jumping all around. It's funny. Well, I can't see myself because I'm hitting other tabs. So I bet you I look kind of weird on this. Oh. All right, guys. Any more specific questions about 1, 2, 3, or 4? Periods 1, 2, 3, 4. Excuse me. Cultural well, what's nationalism, Hendry? And remember, love of one's country, right? Cultural nationalism, the belief that the Americans were more superior. Obviously, I mean, look at the Indian Removal Act that happens during the time of Jackson. That's obviously an example of perhaps cultural nationalism where white Americans, white Christian Americans are asserting the authority as the strongest culture. Remember the word WAS, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, white English-speaking, or Saxony is actually from France. So I think that's why they added that. And then largely we're not Catholic, we're Protestant, right? So the individuals that came over are in that area. Again, I think this is related to the era of good feelings and President Monroe. And the idea is that we had a good, strong feeling. I mean, we won the war. We didn't win the War of 12, but we were able to somewhat stop, even though they burned down the White House, but stop the British from totally kicking our butts. And we felt, wow, we did pretty good. I mean, we came out with a massive black eye. We're missing some teeth. We didn't probably win, but we didn't get our butt horribly kicked, or we're basically stuck all over again. So. Oob's question about the Seneca Falls Convention and women. A lot of historians would say it's a civil war. You know, the idea of slavery and sectionalism really unites a lot of people more so than women's rights at that time, which is kind of interesting to think about. And you know, the increase in sectionalism and the increasing division. I mean, it's very similar to immigration at this time, right? Right now, I really feel like I just watched a news report about a Democrat candidate that came down here, and you know how a couple of the people that came there to watch him said, you know, like the biggest issue right now is immigration. Like I think climate change is one of the biggest issues, but that's not me, right? So I think just like immigration is a more important issue than other things, or like our national debt, or other, I think, way more important things. That's what's happening. At this time, I really think that slavery and sectionalism is a really divine force. I mean, it literally is dividing America into two. And, you know, the Compromise of 1850, and then we start getting bleeding Kansas. I think, especially our Congress, right? Remember who's in control? White men, right? So our white men, who some of them are voting from slave states and some of them are coming from free states, that's their issue right now. It's if Congress is full of women, I think they do that, but then obviously they'd be considered citizens and have the right to vote already, so we don't have to deal with it. So, you know, I think a lot of historians say that the sectionalism, the issue of slavery, and the upcoming Civil War really is what put women's rights on the back burner. I mean, the same thing happened in World War I, right? President Wilson is called the Kaiser in that you know, DBQ that we do, and President Wilson basically goes to the suffragettes at this time, these women who are going to work into factories, by the way, to support men and all those other things and support their country. And he's saying, hold on, let me focus on this war. Let Congress focus on this war. Let's win this war. And after the war, you'll get your right. I think that was kind of the issue at that time. It's like, hold on, women, stop screaming and yelling, chill out. We got other things that we got to do. And, you know, I think a lot of historians would say that's the reason at that time. And also the fact that Congress, as it is, it's getting better. You know, we got a lot of women voted in, but Congress is largely dominated by white males, right? I mean, it is all white males at this time. So I'm pretty sure I don't think there's a black congressman at this time. You know, there's a couple that show up actually quite early in history, but I don't think so. Economic nationalism, Hendry, and kind of talked about earlier. This idea of putting on tariffs or protective tariffs on other people's goods. Largely, all those things are always going to backfire and cause problems for us because we are a very young country and we need to have that trade and moving, and it only is really going to affect us. So economic nationalism are the different tariffs they puts in. I can give you a page number, Hendry, and I'm on all of this stuff. So it'd be after the War of 1812. So nationalism. So here we go. 151. We get the tariff of 1816. Henry Clay's American system, protective tariffs, a national bank, and internal improvements. There's that renewing of the charter, right? There's Henry Clay going, oops. There's the issue, right? There's Henry Clay's American system. It happens, right? And look, there's the answer too in the second paragraph on page 152. Two parts of Clay's system were already in place in 1816. The last year of James Madison presidency, Congress in that year adopted a protective tariff and also chartered the second bank of the United States. And there's that little Wikipedia that we just read. The charter of the first bank, Hamilton's brainchild, had been allowed to expire in 1811. So there you go. And then also what does this lead into? Panic. And what is this panic on? Let's see here. The second bank gets into control, and what do? They tighten credit. And what does that mean? State banks can't get the money that they need to get from the federal bank because the interest rate's way too high. So they begin to close. When that closes, unemployment, more bankruptcies. Then we have people getting in prison for debt. All right. Remember, that's Shays' Rebellion. And that's, Daniel Shays is that crazy farmer, but he's an American Revolutionary War veteran. And he's getting frustrated that all of these farmers are being put into debt because they can't get access to to loans. Remember that Hamilton at this time, gets in that bank, and with that bank, he's going to jack up interest rates to make sure that the people make money. What do banks always want to do? They want to jack up those interest rates. Right. So that's why you need a bank to kind of control the interest rates, is what we have today. Right. Or else they probably keep on jacking things up so that people couldn't get any money. And compete with another about who's going to do it the highest. So it says here the Depression was most severe in the West, where many people were in debt because they speculated on land during the post-war euphoria. Probably when that word speculation, remember, is like taking a guess on land, not necessarily knowing. If you're not next to a river, if you have rocks and massive rocks and boulders in the middle of this land that you just bought, you got some massive problems for farming. So, yeah, we just went through it. Precious for the Panic of 1819, right? Here it is. Here's the effect. The last sentence, the last paragraph. As a result, right, of the bank panic and depression, nationalist beliefs were shaken. So go back to Hendrine. Remember those economic things. Remember I told you those protective tariffs began to backfire. It looks like the second bank of the United States didn't help things as well. And they don't feel so strong that America is so awesome again. And then in the West, the economic crisis changed many voters' political outlook. West has been calling for land reform and expressing strong opposition to both the national bank and debtors' prisons. All right. And so who's going to come in after this? Our boy, Andrew Jackson. And what is he going to do? He's going to be a man of the common man. And he's going to be pissed off. Let me see if that's correct. I'm pretty sure, right? Yeah. It's got it. It's Monroe. Right? So he's going to be pissed off that all this is happening. He's going to make things easier for bankers to get out of debt and get cheaper access to land and cheaper loans and all those things. Oh, sorry, guys. Tired. Sure, Adrian. So he says, let's go to page 167 and let's look at the multiple choice questions. So remember, step one is to look at, when you come to these, step one is to look at the question. So the question is this, which phrase, and so, yeah, again, so you should read the questions 1, 2, and 3. I'll read them out loud, Which phrase by Burleigh best addressed the motives of the largest number of immigrants coming to the United States during the years of 1816 to 1848? Next, in that case, yeah, I don't know. So the next thing that I do is I begin trying to answer this question. and think about it. That's what the pause was. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to read through the answers and figure it out. So why would immigrants come to the United States? For a good climate, this isn't a why, so definitely that one's out. Good pay for labor, perhaps. Kind neighbors, not necessarily. Get that one out. A hearty welcome, most likely D. All right, so right now it's on B and D. It looks like I want to read this before I make a decision. I want to figure out what Burley says in here. Next, in the 2 decades following Burley's comments, the portions, so this is 1817, so all 1837, the portions of the United States most affected by immigration were, well, remember, we just talked about the market revolution and them going to cities. So I'm already thinking, I didn't even look at the answers, but I'm already thinking the word urban, northeast, something like that. Rural areas in the Northeast? No, 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 no. States with large plantations, farms? No, 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 no. Lands west of the Appalachian Mountains? No, 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 no. Cities and territories that were not yet states? Wow. Yeah, I guess you get, yeah, because they may move west where they don't get kicked out. Why? Probably in New York and all these other areas, they're already established and people already have jobs, right? So they're going out to the new cities that are popping up more over there. So I'm going to go with D because of cities. Which of the following reinforced the message that Burley was sending to people who wanted to move to America? Which of the following reinforced the message that Burley was sending to people who wanted to move to America? Well, I have to go ahead and read it. Which following? I'm sorry, I'm going back and forth. I was going to read the document. Which of the following reinforced the message that Burley was sending to people who wanted to move to America? The American System, Industrialization, Protected Tariff, Rush Bag Agreement. I don't remember the Rush Bag Agreement, so let's hope it's not that. So it's going to read this. The only encouragements we hold to our strangers are a good climate, fertile soil, wholesome air and water, plenty of provisions, good pay for labor, kind neighbors, good laws, a free government, and a hearty welcome. The rest depends on a man's own industry and virtue. If a European has previously resolved to go to the western country near the Allegheny or Ohio rivers, a few-day journey will bring him to Cumberland, from whence the public road begun by the United States crossed the mountains. You will, however, observe that the privilege of citizenship is not granted without proper precautions. To secure that, while the worthy are admitted, the unworthy should, if practicably, be rejected. You will from hence deduce the importance of good moral habits, even to the acquisition of political rights. All right, so going back over here, if they want to go to these areas, go through a mountain. I don't know. Even he says don't leave. It's not, you may be rejected and should be, but it doesn't say you're going to be. I'm going to keep a D, a hearty welcome. And people wanted to move to America. You know, they got that road, they got the rivers, American System. Which will finally reinforce the message that Burley was saying to people who wanted to America. Oh man, I don't like this. Sometimes I don't like some of these questions. You can see how these are a lot different, guys. I don't know, what year is my book? Mine's 2018, but it just feels different than what some of the questions would be on the test. If that makes sense. You know, I think it'd be better, you know, that we go through the questions hinging on the released exam that you got today. In class, and we do that kind of in class, and we kind of focus on a couple as a group rather than kind of going through these, because in these review books are okay, but how many times have you seen them quote the exact words on question number 1 from the document? I don't remember any times, you know, on the actual final test that you guys took from the College Board. So I just really feel like these questions are a bit off, and I really feel that a lot of our textbooks are still struggling to figure out what is going to be on the new test, just like I keep on kind of telling you that as well. Hillary, transcendentalism. Yeah, we could go on that a little bit. Yeah, it's during this period as well, so it's definitely on it. You know, page number would be nice for you guys, per usual, but basically what it is that you can bring heaven on earth. To transcend means to bring down. All right, or go through or something like that. So transcendentalism, Transcendentalist 209. So at this time, the Transcendentalists were a group of, they're largely writers and poets, and they had a deep appreciation for nature. Obviously, they're against warfare and bad things. They're kind of saying like artists and liberals, right? Usually, you know, any type of artist, even if they're like usually hip hop artists, even like they usually have a feeling against war type of a thing. So on 209, we have the Transcendentalists, and so we have, you know, Ralph Waldo Emerson. Let's go ahead and just go into read the first paragraph for you. So again, writers such as Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau questioned the doctrines of the established churches and the business practices of the merchant class. Stop again. They're a little confused about organized religion and they're pretty frustrated about the middle and upper class and how they're treating people in these factories. Remember that we have child labor at this time. They argued for a mystical, magical, and like unicorns, an intuitive way of thinking as a means for discovering one's inner self, right? To know your soul, right? And who you are, and looking for the essence of God in nature. Once again, if you know Romanticism from Europe, it kind of feels really romantic. And by the way, Romanticism at Europe is going off right now pretty strong. What's going over in America, right? Remember that they do have access to one another. So I guarantee people are traveling and going, whoa, Romanticism's going over here. Oh, I'm going to call it bringing heaven to earth, transcendentalism. Their views challenged the materialist American society, that all these factories, we needed all these little things, so by suggesting the artistic expression was more important than the pursuit of wealth. Again, a bunch of sounds like hippie artists. Although the transcendentalists valued individualism, being by your own, and highly viewed organized institutions as unimportant, they supported a variety of forms, especially the anti-slavery movement. So again, these people are like religious, but they're kind of like monkish. They're kind of like hippies. They're kind of like little communists. They're going to build like little utopian societies that is focused around loving God and being in harmony with nature. One of the most boring, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Henry David Thoreau. There's that thing I talked about in this class, I think, on civil disobedience. That's where he refuses to pay taxes for the Mexican-American War because he doesn't believe in war, and because that he's thrown into jail. So there you go. And you look at this, Thoreau's essays and actions would inspire the nonviolent movements of Gandhi in India. He protested the British who were taking over India at the time, and Martin Luther King Jr. in the United States. So there you go. Brooke Form, right? There's that George Ripley from the DBQ, and they try to create a utopian community, right? And the next page, 210, are these communal experiments. These are all individuals who are trying to build these little like communities where everybody helps one another and takes care of one another and makes like a little heaven here on earth, right? And they kind of talk about how successful they were or not. All right, there's transcendentalism. I need some water, guys. Give me a second. All right. Next. All right. Well, I will wait for a question. While I do that, we'll talk about OOBS, about effects of Uncle Tom's Cabin on both North and South. I'll get to yours, Hillary, in a second. Just real quickly, I really see the Fugitive Slave Act more of a more important effect than Uncle Tom's Cabin, because Uncle Tom's Cabin is kind of written, I believe, in response to Fugitive Slave Act. And what was Uncle Tom's Cabin was a novel that became a national bestseller. A lot of people read this. A lot of people in the South even read it. They came up with, actually, if you actually do the research, I think, I don't know if we talked, I guarantee that we didn't talk about it, but I think it was last year. You actually research, they actually come with different version of Uncle Tom's Cabin in the South, where the slave owner is really, really nice, and he's helpful, and he's a good person, and he takes care of his slaves in a really, really positive way, and he doesn't ever harm them, and all these different things. But Uncle Tom's Cabin was basically the story of, and you guys did a lot of this stuff on Khan Academy, but was a story of his character who basically goes further and further down the river, and you go down the further going down south, and it's like going further and further into hell, so to speak. And it's a fictional, a false, right, a made up story that Harriet Beecher Stowe writes. Remember that she's the or I think it's a guy, right? I keep on screwing this up every time. Harriet Beecher Stowe. No, it's a woman. I mean, it's Harriet for God's sakes. So yeah, but she is the daughter of another preacher. I think it's Lyman Beecher Stowe. Maybe I don't know. That just name pops up with the Second Great Awakening. But anyways, she writes this book, and this book becomes a bestseller, and Uncle Tom basically dies at the very end, and at the end the slave owner understands what Uncle Tom was trying to do, which is basically not give up his religion and his faith in God and Christianity. And it kind of portrays the slave owner as kind of an idiot that goes through a kind of a revival experience, right? A Christian revival experience. But it just makes slavery more aware to everybody, especially if you're far in the north. You haven't had slavery since the beginning of the country. You may have not gone to the south ever and wanted to deal with this. And now the issue of slavery is kind of in the foreground, right? The Vietnam War, is really when television, really live television, you could see what was going on live, right? World War II and World War I, especially have film, right? And news documentaries. Civil War, you've got photographies, photographs. Well, all of these things, whether it be a book, a photograph, film, or live TV, and now we got like Facebook Live, right? It brings these issues into the home of Americans, and so they have to wrestle with these things. So Uncle Tom's Cabin definitely just increases the moral problem of slavery between the North and the South. So there you go. Oops. Lewis and Clark, I don't know if I want to know too much about that. I think they get the help of an Indian guide called Sacagawea. There's a famous gold dollar coin called a Sacagawea gold dollar coin that we used to all have. Got minted in like the late 90s. But anyways, this Lewis and Clark with the Indian guide were just hired by Thomas Jefferson to check out all the land, and they went as far as actually the Pacific Ocean, went all the way to Oregon. And so they come back and they go, dude, this land's incredible. It's big. It has all these different things. They're mapping it. They're making documents of the resources that they're finding. So it's basically helping Thomas Jefferson and the Americans thrust and continue their manifest destiny. So there's Lewis and Clark. Sorry. Corrupt bargain. You got a page number on that, Hillary? I think that's a deal between this is a deal with Andrew Jackson and Henry Clay. Henry Clay basically key terms. What key terms? I don't think I have those key terms. I don't think I have that. Let me see if I can find the page number then. Since you don't have it, I'm sure you have a period number that you can help me with that. But that corrupt bargain was basically to keep Andrew Jackson out of being the president, and it worked. And so he tries again, and this time he says it's a corrupt. He kind of says this corrupt bargain. That's how I got screwed. Page 194. So where is the corrupt bargain? Yeah, so there we go. Yeah, and there's Jackson with Adams, John Quincy Adams. So it's on the first paragraph on page 194. Among voters in the states that counted popular votes, 6-0, Jackson won, but because the vote was split 4 ways, he lacked the majority in the Electoral College as required by the Constitution. Therefore, the House of Representatives had to choose a president from among the top 3 candidates. Henry Clay, who's the Speaker of the House at this time, used his influence in the House to provide Quincy Adams of Massachusetts with enough votes to win the election. When President Adams appointed Clay as Secretary of State, so once President Adams gets hooked, once Henry Clay hooks up John Quincy Adams and he becomes president, suddenly Adams, who just got president because of Henry Clay, appoints Clay as the Secretary of State. And so Jackson goes, dude, you guys are basically hooking each other up. This has nothing to do with democracy. And in fact, I won most of the votes. And if you guys look at if you look at the bar graph on page 194, he got 152,000 votes. The next one is John Quincy Adams. He got 115. He beat the other two by a resounding amount, which is Henry Clay and William Clafford. So basically, Jackson was basically saying, I got screwed out of this. I should have won. I had the most people vote for me. And you two work together to hook each other up so that one could be president, one could be Secretary of State for the president. Ooh. Oh. Yeah, I mean, I don't. You guys, you're getting really into details, Hillary, about the spoil system and stuff. What is the spoil system is basically you hook up your people that were in your party, and that's what they still do today. So I don't know if it's super important. It's politics. I think again, I would really focus, Hillary, on those items. Going back to page 198. The whole. Again, if you go back to 198, Jackson's second term and his removal of the second bank of the United States and putting these pet banks is kind of a super important thing. And what are the pet banks? He basically took all the money out of the big bank and put it all in these small state banks, and the state banks now could kind of do things as they saw fit. So probably to lower the interest rates at first, but unfortunately, if you have all these different banks doing different things, that means in different states you have different rules, and it makes things a little bit easier. A little bit harder to get money from one bank that has one set of rules in one state to another one, right? And once again, what's the story? You slow down moving money, bad things start happening. So yeah, Hillary, sorry, going back. I was just kind of looking around, and I went to page 198 with the pet banks and the reversal of the charter or the second bank of the United States. But Hillary, focus on these key terms that we kind of put on there. If you have any extra time, if you want to, I'd really for you guys that are here, I'd really focus on period 8 in there. Yeah. So period 8, I think, is a part of our history that is a significant part. It's like over probably something % on the test. It's definitely over 5. And let's go ahead and take a look at this. Like I said, I might the other day just watch a little bit of those guys. I'll do that on the block day. We'll do on period 8. We'll just do that. Because I think, a lot of kids too last year, I think, said there was some questions on period 8. So, but going back to my website and figure out the percentage under review, again, we go to the very bottom. Not the very bottom, but scroll down, AP structure and overview, and note % of historical periods on the exam. If you were to look at that, period 8 is 15%. That's a solid chunk, and I don't think I really taught that too much to you guys. So I really think that's what we're going to do on Tuesday and Wednesday of next week. I think I'm just going to play a little Adam Norris, and I'll have a couple times. You guys just have a couple breaks, but I'll try to power through his 15-minute thing, but I'll probably stop it every once in a while and try to explain a little bit more, make sure you guys know what's going on. Okay, guys. Unfortunately, my computer feels like it's about to overheat. It's making a fan sound, and we're about an hour anyways. And my screen just went black. Whoa, there you guys are. So anyways. Yeah, Mario, we can do one on period 8. I think based off of this, if this is period 4, tomorrow's period 5, maybe Thursday we'll do period 6, and then Monday would be period 7, Tuesday period 8, and also Tuesday and Wednesday on period 8. We'll go ahead and do some stuff in class, and really, I don't want you guys doing much. Normally we'd have some fun, man, but unfortunately the spring break just, I don't know, we gotta keep on rolling with you guys. Precious, last question, did pet banks give more power to the states? Hillary, yes, they did, right? Remember that Jackson is a Democrat, right? Not Democratic Republican, but he comes from the Democratic Republicans who used to be called the anti-federalists because you don't want to call them the anti. What do these guys want to do? Increase power to the states. Mario answered that question. Precious, going to yours. The Mexican-American War is going to cause, as we have to put Texas and California, the Dred Scott decision actually says right after the Mexican-American War that the Missouri Compromise was actually unconstitutional. You can't stop states based off of a magical line if they're going to have free or slave states. So they use that power to go ahead and review it. And that's why we start doing the thing called popular sovereignty, where people have the right to vote. And that's where we get that bleeding Kansas and Nebraska thing. So definitely the Missouri Compromise is connected. Is it a cause? No, I remember the Mexican-American War is really, I'd say, two causes. You have the Texas Revolt and also Manifest Destiny, the feeling that they need to move west towards that Oregon goal that Thomas Jefferson had found out with the Lewis and Clark expedition and go see the Shining Sea. So I really think those are the two causes. The really mini causes of obviously the Mexican-American War was we sent a group across and started a fight with a group of Mexicans, and then we said American blood has been spilled on American soil, even though, because we had gotten ready to put Texas in and annex them, but yet they weren't annexed yet. They're still their own country. So that's a whole nother issue. So, but those are the direct causes of the Mexican-American War. How is the Missouri Compromise? It's going to be undone after the Mexican-American War when the Dred Scott versus Sanford case comes out, and Dred Scott is found as a piece of property since he is a slave, and property can move north and south, and therefore this is illegal. The Missouri Compromise cannot stop people from moving their property across a magical line. All right, guys. Got issues with my computer, I feel. It's 1 hour and 3 minutes. Thank you, 7 kids who are here. Hopefully that helped out a little bit. I think a big thing is kind of come armed with some questions next time, guys. Just kind of have a review. Hopefully you guys have some questions that you have ready to go. Yep, no problem, guys. Appreciate the fact that you guys are here and taking advantage of it. So try to get more people on, though. I was just thinking about this earlier because we haven't had nearly as many people show up to these reviews online as I had hoped. But, even when I did it after school, there would only be 1 or 2 people, honestly, that would show up. But honestly, like before I took this class, APUS, they would have like weekend reviews for like 5 hours, 6 hours, and there'd be like 40 kids that would show up. So continue staying here and trying to encourage some of your friends just to hang out from 8 to 9, even like, Aisha and, Mario and all those guys who didn't really ask any questions. That's okay. Just kind of listening to the story, I think, does help. And that's why you guys are here. So try to get all the rest of your friends on board into hanging out with me from 8 to 9 in the next couple of days to try to help you guys. So keep it up, guys. Hopefully this all pays off. All right, guys. Have a good night. Take care.